The year is 1991, and the world holds its breath as the Soviet Union teeters on the brink of collapse. Economic stagnation, political unrest, and the growing discontent of its republics threaten to unravel the superpower. But what if, in a pivotal moment, history took a different turn? What if the Soviet Union never dissolved? In this alternate timeline, the August coup of 1991 succeeds. The hardline communists, led by the Gang of Eight, seize control of the Kremlin, placing Mikhail Gorbachev under house arrest. Boris Yeltsin, the defiant leader of the Russian Republic, is swiftly neutralized, his resistance crushed before it can gain momentum. The Soviet Union, rather than fracturing into independent states, remains intact under a new, more authoritarian regime. The immediate consequences are stark. The Baltic states, which had declared independence, are brutally reoccupied by Soviet forces. Protests in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia are met with overwhelming military force, silencing dissent. The world watches in horror, but with the Cold War still raging, Western intervention is limited to economic sanctions and diplomatic condemnation. The Iron Curtain remains firmly in place. Inside the USSR, the new leadership abandons Gorbachev's reforms. Glasnost and perestroika are reversed, and the Soviet economy reverts to central planning. The black market thrives as shortages worsen, but the regime maintains control through fear and repression. The KGB, now more powerful than ever, roots out dissidents with ruthless efficiency. The Soviet Union becomes a fortress, isolated but intact. The 1990s unfold differently. Without the fall of the USSR, the United States remains the sole superpower in a unipolar world, but its dominance is challenged by a resurgent Soviet Union. The Cold War never truly ends, it simply enters a new phase. NATO expands cautiously, wary of provoking Moscow, while the Soviet Union tightens its grip on Eastern Europe. The Warsaw Pact, though weakened, survives as a counterbalance to Western influence. By the early 2000s, the Soviet Union faces a new crisis: stagnation. The command economy, unable to adapt to the digital age, falls further behind the West. The Internet, which in our timeline revolutionized global communication, is heavily restricted in the USSR. A state-controlled intranet replaces the World Wide Web, limiting access to information and stifling innovation. The technological gap widens, and the Soviet Union becomes a relic of the past, clinging to outdated ideologies. Yet, the regime endures. The leadership, now dominated by a new generation of hardliners, suppresses unrest with brutal efficiency. The Soviet Union remains a nuclear-armed fortress, a shadow of its former self, but still a force to be reckoned with. The world adapts to this new reality, where the Cold War never truly ended, and the specter of nuclear annihilation looms large. In this timeline, the 21st century is defined by a prolonged standoff. The Soviet Union, though economically weak, remains a military powerhouse. Its vast nuclear arsenal ensures that no nation dares to challenge it directly. The West, meanwhile, grapples with the consequences of a world where the Soviet Union never fell. The European Union, without the influx of former Eastern Bloc nations, remains a smaller, more cautious entity. The United States, no longer the unchallenged hegemon, must navigate a world where the Cold War's tensions persist. The Soviet people, meanwhile, live in a state of quiet desperation. The promises of communism have long since faded, replaced by a grim reality of scarcity and surveillance. Yet, the regime's propaganda machine ensures that many still believe in the system, or at least fear the alternative. The Soviet Union, in this timeline, becomes a cautionary tale, a nation that refused to change and in doing so condemned itself to irrelevance. But what if the Soviet Union had taken a different path? What if, instead of clinging to the past, it had embraced reform? What if the August coup had failed, but the USSR had found a way to evolve rather than collapse? These are the questions that linger in this alternate history, a world where the Soviet Union never dissolved and the Cold War never truly ended. In this reality, the Soviet Union remains a colossus, a fading giant that refuses to die. The world watches, waits, and wonders, how long can it last, and what will happen when it finally falls?